Hello and welcome to this workshop on extended techniques, where I will be presenting an introduction to extended techniques for string players. The term extended techniques is used to describe unconventional methods of playing the instrument which reach beyond our traditional technique. As music has evolved, particularly over the course of the last century, composers and instrumentalists have experimented to find new sounds and effects and also new means of expression. And this has resulted in the deconstruction of many musical and technical conventions, along with the creation of a whole host of innovative techniques. By thinking outside the box, we open up so many new outlets for creativity. The possibilities are really limitless here, so I will be presenting just a starting point. While I will be demonstrating these techniques on the cello, they can all be reproduced on any string instrument with just some minor modifications. First, I will introduce extended techniques in pizzicato, then for the left hand, and then for the bow. Finally, I will discuss the prepared cello. In our traditional technique, we typically play pizzicato with the index finger of the right hand to produce a full-bodied and ringing tone. We may also use the thumb for a rounder and more resonant sound. To expand upon our pizzicato technique, we can incorporate multiple fingers of the right and left hands and even use combinations of the two. We also explore a variety of sound qualities and percussive effects. First up, we have the Bartók pizz, or the snap pizzicato. Instead of pulling the string across, we pull directly up so the string snaps back against the fingerboard. It's notated by a circle with a vertical line through the top, placed directly above or below the note, which you can see in the example here. It can be executed by wrapping the index finger under the string and pulling up or at an angle, or by pinching the string between the thumb and index finger and pulling directly up. And this one has more of a bite to it. Buzz pizzicato creates another sound effect, produced by plucking the string and then gently placing the fingernail or another object against the vibrating string, and it creates a rattling sound. Too much contact with the nail can kill the sound really quickly. So it takes a bit of finesse to find the right contact to produce the desired sound. I found that resting the buzzing finger on the fingerboard and then turning the finger slowly to meet the string helps stabilize the finger and control the approach. We can also use an object like a guitar pick. And you can hear more of a twanging sound with the pick. As opposed to using the pad of the finger to produce a round tone, we may also use the fingernail to produce a more direct or even tinny sound. A guitar pick or a credit card or other materials like that can also be used for a similar effect. And I'll use a guitar pick since I have it right here. We can also explore unusual pizzicato locations, such as behind the bridge. Here the strings are very taut and they have a high-pitched and thin metallic sound when plucked. Plucking inside the peg box produces a similar effect. We can even pluck the tail gut. And it has a really high-pitched sound. Mine sounds as a high B natural. The left hand may also be used to play pizzicato in a number of ways. All of the fingers of the left hand can be used to pluck the string. By pulling fingers off the string, stopped pitches can be plucked by the left hand, and it's often used for virtuosic effects. This technique can be used in combination with the bow in a few ways. In this next excerpt from the first movement of Hinastera's work for solo cello, Punina No. 2, the bow sustains a drone on the bottom, while the left hand stops pitches and plays pizzicato. It's very busy. One more particularly wild example from the same piece also sustains a drone on the bottom while strumming the strings above. These combined techniques are actually a great challenge in coordinating the left and right hands independently, and especially not letting articulation in the left hand affect the speed and weight of the bow. You can hear how the bow emphasizes every time the left hand plays pizzicato. While here the bow sustains in a more uninterrupted way. Pizzicato may also alternate between the left and right hands, allowing for a rapid exchange. This technique is featured prominently in the second movement of Benjamin Britten's cello sonata, which is played entirely pizzicato. I'll play an excerpt from this movement now. This can be tricky to coordinate at first in a fast tempo, but with alternation between fast and slow practice, in order to understand the coordination, it's quite satisfying to play it in the end. There are also many ways to play chords pizzicato. Typically, we play chords with either the thumb or index finger, strumming at an angle diagonal to the strings. We can combine and expand this in many creative ways. An upward stroke with the thumb has a warm sound, as it initiates the bass note first. It's more suited for slower strumming and allows for greater variance and control over the speed of the chord in general. And a downward stroke works best with a faster attack and a firm finger. I usually use my middle finger for this, but you might also find the index finger to be more comfortable. It has a more direct sound because the chord is faster and it also engages the highest note of the chord first. We can also use a combination of up and down strokes. By using 4 fingers of the right hand, we can pluck all 4 notes of the chord simultaneously. And this sound is really clean and precise. 4 fingers can also strum the chord, which has a bit of a messier sound. This can be done by approaching the strings with the fingers extended and the hand turned inward, turning the hand outward to strike the strings diagonally downward, and allowing the fingers to hit the strings in a scattered pattern. Finally, for a percussive effect, the left hand can mute the strings by just resting on top and preventing them from vibrating. With just these variables, there are endless possibilities for creativity and exploration in pizzicato technique alone. I've already covered some left-hand techniques, and now I'll present a few more, beginning with Fingerschlag. Fingerschlag is the technique of hammering fingers onto the string to produce pitches with left-hand articulation alone. Normally, when we play pitches arco, we hear just one pitch, which is produced from the string vibrating from the stopped finger until the bridge. When hammering the fingers against the string, it vibrates more freely from both the nut until the stopped finger and the stopped finger until the bridge, which can produce extra, perhaps unwanted pitches and noise. You can also hear the sound of the string hitting the fingerboard, and my A is especially noisy. You can hear two distinct pitches there. If this is not the desired effect, the sound can be clarified by placing another finger below the playing finger. So I'll be placing my first finger on the string to play a clean sound with my second finger. By varying the speed and force of the articulation, dynamics can also be incorporated into this technique, with a heavier and faster attack resulting in a louder sound. This technique is frequently combined with left-hand pizzicato. We can also use a similar technique to get harmonics to sound by tapping them with the left hand. By striking the finger precisely against natural harmonic points on the fingerboard and then immediately releasing, these pitches can ring pretty clearly. I think the thumb works great for this effect, and using a flicking motion works really well. Another extended technique involving harmonics is playing a trill between a harmonic note and a stopped pitch, which is done by quickly lifting the finger up and down on the string without ever losing contact with the string, and it produces a fluttering effect. It has a pretty unstable sound. It is also interesting to put the transition between a harmonic and a stopped note under the microscope and explore all the sounds that happen in between. I'll play a stopped F sharp on the D string and slowly release to a harmonic pitch. Changing the contact point is really useful when transitioning between a stopped and harmonic note, as we typically play harmonics closer to the bridge. I'll try this transition again while staying near the fingerboard the entire time. It's more difficult to get the harmonic to speak in this contact point, but it can also be an interesting sound if you're looking for a more subtle sound in the transition. And now I'll play it again while moving to the bridge. Here the harmonic just has more life to it. Now the bow. Some of the extended bowing techniques include pushing our traditional technique to the extreme by manipulating our three main sound ingredients, which are bow weight, bow speed, and contact point. On the extreme ends of contact point, which is where we place our bow on the string, we have sul ponticello, which is at the bridge, and sul tosto, which is by the fingerboard. The closer to the bridge we play, the more overtones we activate, producing a more complex tone quality. Conversely, the further from the bridge we play, the less overtones we activate, resulting in a simpler and softer sound. When playing near the bridge, the sound favors the high-pitched overtones. When playing extremely close to the bridge, a faster bow with less weight can basically eliminate the fundamental pitch, which is this lower note, entirely, focusing exclusively on overtones. This sound is very metallic. This is particularly effective when combined with tremolo. Soltasto is played on the fingerboard, where the string responds best to a faster bow. A heavy and slow bow at this point creates a completely different overpressed sound. Just as we explored the transitional sounds between a harmonic and a stopped pitch, the transition between soltasto and sol ponticello is also interesting here. By keeping the weight and bow speed the same throughout the transition, you can hear how much of a difference contact point alone makes in the sound. And going way overboard on the ponticello, we may even be asked to play sub ponticello, which means to play behind the bridge. What a nice sound. On the subject of unexpected bowing placements, when bowing underneath the strings with the hair facing up against the strings, it becomes possible to play the A and C strings at the same time. For this technique, I completely abandoned the refined bow grip, instead holding it in a fist and placing my thumb on the stick below. Turning the forearm and hand up and in helps in applying pressure on the strings from below. It's surprisingly challenging to play both strings evenly and consistently. Some composers even call for an overpressured sound, distorting the pitch entirely and reducing the tone to noise. This may also be initiated gradually to show the transformation from pitch to noise. It's done by slowing the bow speed and adding weight. And this is a sound we generally avoid in our traditional classical style of playing our instruments, but it is welcome in this space. When using this technique, you may hear the original pitch drop down by an octave or nearly an octave. This low and dead-sounding pitch is called a subharmonic. Subharmonics can be tricky to produce and sustain, and the necessary weight, speed, and contact point will vary from instrument to instrument and string to string. Most importantly, a heavy bow with a slow and very consistent bow speed is needed, and it's really important to pronate the hand or lean into the string this way adequately in order to maintain that weight in the string while getting further out in the bow. The bow can also be used for percussive purposes. Ricochet is played by throwing the hair onto the strings. It's easiest to do with the down bow using flat hair. turning the bow over, we can play with the stick, which is called colegno. By rotating the bow, varying amounts of hair can be incorporated into the stroke, which changes the tone quality. With more hair, there's more presence in the sound. Often, colegno is combined with ricochet, or otherwise striking the string percussively. By dampening the strings with the left hand, the colegno stroke can create a high-pitched percussive sound. The pitch can actually be controlled with this technique, as the pitch is higher when the bow strikes nearer to the bridge. George Crumb employs this technique very effectively in the second movement of his string quartet Black Angels, which is called Sounds of Bones and Flutes. He writes indeterminate pitches in the score here, which means he doesn't specify the exact notes, but he does notate the overall contour, which you can see in the example here. And you can certainly hear the bones here. The last extended bowing technique I will present is chopping. Chopping is a percussive bow technique which is frequently used in pop and folk styles. It's done by scraping the bow hair against the strings directly up or down, using gravity to drop weight into the string on the way down. It's easiest to play at the frog. There can be no horizontal motion in this chop, otherwise you'll get a pitched sound. Dampening the strings with the left hand also helps produce a cleaner sound. It can be incorporated into passages in a lot of ways to create a rhythmic groove. Now we have made it to the final section of the workshop, the prepared cello. Preparing the cello means to somehow alter the ordinary playing conditions of the instrument, especially through the application of external objects. The magic of the prepared instrument is that after setting or attaching the materials, they affect the sound without a great deal of attention or alteration to the normal playing technique. So you don't need to press the materials to the string or otherwise engage with them as you play to get the sound effect, although you certainly have the option of manipulating them to distort or alter their effects. Using a mute or retuning one or more of the strings are a couple of ways we prepare the cello in traditional playing. Out of endless options, I will explore 3 types of materials and a few sounds they can make: rattles, papers, and foil. By attaching an object loosely to one or more strings, it will act as a rattle, moving against the vibrating string. A paper clip is a good potential rattle, and I will go ahead and fasten this to my G and C strings. It's not fixed in place here. Free motion is a key element to the rattle. With a light and slow bow, the sound is pretty subtle. While a faster bow creates a wilder rattle. You can play with the placement of the rattle as well. With this paper clip, see how the sound changes when I put it on the other side of the bow. You can really hear the bow and paper clip fighting here. We can also fix objects to the strings or weave them between the strings to buzz or even distort the sound. Okay. Lighter objects, like paper, produce a soft buzzing sound and reduce the overtone production overall. A stronger pluck or a faster bow speed increases the noise production. It works best to wrap the paper underneath the strings you want it to affect. So I will wrap it underneath the C string and underneath the A string. Since the paper is really light and flexible, you might find that it moves around on the cello while you play, which changes the sound as you play. You can also experiment with the starting placement of the paper. So I'll put it up now around 4th position. By applying heavier and denser objects, the effect becomes more prominent and more high overtones are present in the sound. This tightly folded piece of foil is excellent for this purpose, as it's pliable and easily altered. Foil is so versatile and effective, and it's my favorite material to use. Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm playing an electric cello. There are many variables that can be adjusted, such as what and how many strings it's attached to, how tightly it's fastened, where it's placed, and also the size and density of the foil itself. Also, when we wrap 2 strings together with the foil, one may react sympathetically when the other is activated. So I'm attaching this foil firmly to the G and C strings and close to the bridge, behind the bowing area, where it creates a sharp and buzzing, distorted sound, and we can still hear changes in the pitch pretty distinctively. Now I'll move the foil to the end of the fingerboard, which will completely change the sound. With a slower bow speed and just a moderate amount of weight, it sounds kind of like static. But with the lighter and faster bow, you can hear harmonic tones. With this placement of the foil, you don't hear pitch changes in their original octave. Instead, you hear them in a higher register. I'm playing in the first position, but it sounds way up high as overtones. These are just a few ways the cello can be prepared, and even with these 3 materials, there's still a lot of room for experimentation. When working with a prepared cello, just be sure to keep the instrument safe, carefully fastening materials, and being sure not to let anything fall onto or into the body of the instrument. As long as any added materials are securely attached and your cello is safe, there are no limits on exploration here. Extended techniques allow for us as string players to discover new sounds and effects, to stay on our toes, and to think outside the box in our technique and our music making. I hope you enjoyed this brief introduction to extended techniques and that it also invites curiosity on the topic and encourages further experimentation and exploration. After our Q&A for this session, which will happen now, stay tuned for the next workshop where violinist Edward W. Hardy will explore improvisation from classical to pop music and also perform one of his original compositions.